listeners, welcome back to the Lone Screenplay Nominee podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar in the writing categories. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and today we have Nick Zednik back on the show. Hey, Zeddy, how you doing?
Hello, Matthew. I'm happy to be back here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, but for the moment, I'm going to push you off to the side because we have someone who has been trying to get on the show for almost 2 years now. I should mention we're gaining up on it pretty closely. We have one of the other co-hosts of the Vigilante 1939 podcast, and
my better half.
Yeah, and I'm told I'm told he is a very big fan. He's like probably the biggest fan I know of this little Oscar contender called Emilia Perez. Who's on the show.
No, don't tell the people this. Don't tell the people this.
We were not supposed to say that name anymore. That was it.
I thought I was done too. You know what's funny? I was like, what is he going to say? Like, so at first I'm like, is he going to say a movie I actually, is he going to say The Outrun and make a joke about how Saoirse Ronan
No. There were a lot of potentials, like The King's Speech was one of them, and then, The Outrun
that's a good one. That's a good one.
But in all honesty, so anyways, here's Nico Caruso, who's on the show for the first time. Hopefully this won't be the only time you have you on the show, but we'll see how your schedule lines up later on in the future.
Whenever you need me. Yeah, whenever you need me, my friend.
Yeah. How are you doing, Nico?
Good. Happy to be here. Like we said, we've been trying to make it happen for a while, and we've also been talking about doing this specific movie for a while. So when the opportunity came up, we finally got the ball rolling. Here we are, and I have a lot to say about this movie, as I'm sure that you both do. But I'm particularly curious on your thoughts, Mr. Matthew, because I know how Zeddy feels about the movie.
Yeah.
So you're the only mystery for me, and that rhymed. So
it'll be a mystery box that we won't even open during the show. I'm kidding. We'll open it.
I'm already digging this screenplay we got going on right here. This is great.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So let's just jump right into it. So since this will be our first Lone Screenplay Nominee podcast episode that we're doing of the year, we're going to switch it around, audience. We're not going to give you the I did a bit of just a little tune-up with the outline in of itself. So we're pretty much going to be following a similar format to what the Lone Screenplay winners are. Introduce the guests, jump into the episode, and then we'll talk about the awards season race. But any other production notes or history we have on it, we'll just talk about in between, or if we have anything to bring up during our notes, and what we thought of the movie, that's when we'll do it. But yeah, so this is our first one of the season, or of the year, I should say, because I think the last one I did was on In the Loop with Christina Uring-Bureau, which was a great episode in of itself. But I just figured, I mentioned earlier, and I hinted at earlier the year that we would change up the outline, so that'll be that. So yeah, let's just jump right into our discussion and just rip this Band-Aid wide open the box, find out what's in the box of First Reformed. So this was a 2017 film written and directed by Paul Schrader. This, as all of our episodes are, this won't be a beat-by-beat bulletin presentation like you hear on other channels, but we will be discussing major spoilers for our talk. If you haven't seen the film yet and want to hear our full thoughts on it, watch the film first and then come back to hear us talk about it in full. Because you'd be surprised for a movie that's almost, 2 hours long, and you'd think on the surface level there's not much happening. There's a fair amount that happens in the movie, even on a more psychological and theological level, so to speak. So, yeah. So I'm just going to give the log line first, which is the film, in case you are not aware of what the movie is or if I need to remind the audience what it is. It essentially evolves around a minister of a small congregation in upstate New York grapples with mounting despair brought on by tragedy, worldly concerns, and a tormented past. So, Zeddy, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass the mic over to Nico. I want to ask you, since you've already stated before we started it, and now on the air too, that you've already seen this movie before watching it for the show. Why was it that this was the film you were like, I need to talk about this on the show, Matt? Like, out of all the Lone Screenplay nominees / winners, this was the one you had to be on for.
That's a great question. So so there's a two-part answer. The first part answer is I really do love this film, and I love the screenplay, and I love that it got nominated. And it's a screenplay that I really, really, really want to talk about when you kind of introduce your show, and then we learn, how you're going to dive into the lone screenplay nominees. And I also thought it's one, and this brings me into the second reason I want to be on the show. I feel like there's a lot I could offer from a personal standpoint, and I do have a pretty strong personal connection to this film, and I'll close that because we'll get deeper into it later. But I strongly identify with the character of Ernst Toller in this movie, and while my journey is not as extreme as his or another character in the film, there's a lot of questions that this movie raises. There's a lot that it challenges from an environmental and like a theological standpoint, like you were saying, that I really identify with. And it's not that I'm excited to talk about all that because it's heavy, but I think it's something that's very interesting. And when you're able to have like a nuanced conversation around the things that this movie's trying to say, I think it's can be very powerful. So that's why I'm here.
Well, yeah, that's the power of film. Sometimes it just affects you on a really emotional and personal level that you're just like, yeah, this really touched me. Zeddy, I'm going to throw the baton over to you. Why was it that you also wanted to discuss this outside of, sharing the spotlight with your co-host from the Vigilante podcast?
Yeah, well, this is actually a full circle thing, not just Vols, but Nico was actually the one that recommended this movie to me. Now, granted, I did not see this movie when it initially came out. I saw this movie during the pandemic, and when you were in the pandemic, you were looking for things to do.
Same.
So Nico referred me over to the brand that is now formerly known as A24. So going through their whole catalog in the pandemic, this was a personal recommendation by Nico, and fully watching the movie, understand why. My long story history of this movie is Nico and I grew up together. We went to the same grade school most of our life. We each went to Catholic grade school, so this movie was so profound for me because we grew up in that isolated Catholic grade school landscape where you're not supposed to ask the hard questions. You're not supposed to ask the questions that are asked in this movie. Specifically, you're led to believe that, the priests have all the answers. You can go to them if you need help. All that stuff that's in this movie, I'm not going to jump the gun too far ahead. But this was so profound, like I kind of used that word already, because when I was in the pandemic, you're scared. You don't know what the world's going to look like when you get out there. The character that he meets in this movie was so... It scared the absolute living shit out of me. Pardon my French on that one. Just because, again, I lived in this isolated suburban life that I've known my whole life. I didn't know this type of thing was out there, and the fact that this was now opened up to me, and now knowing the world that we are in today, this was so frighteningly scary for me. So this was like an incredibly deeply moving watch for me, and I'm very excited to dive into that. So that's my long story there.
Yeah, that's fine. I unlike Nico and Zeddy, I actually did watch this before during the Oscar race that it was. I didn't watch it in theaters. I remembered watching it at home. I think it was like days before the Oscars were about to occur, and we'll get into that shit show later on in the episode of what the fuck happened there, because there's so much we could talk about that. But this and I remember this and I think it was like I had to choose between this and The Wife to finish all the way through. Because I think I got through like 10 minutes of The Wife, and I'm like, I'll get around to this. Like after going close wins their Oscar. Oops.
Oops.
Spoiler.
That didn't happen. But yeah, no, I watched it, and I was thinking to myself, okay, all right, I saw it. And then I got around to watching it. Again, Nico and Zeddy wanted to be on the podcast, and I won't name any names, but there were some people who wanted to do this episode, and I told them, I'm sorry. I can't. I made a promise to Nico and Zeddy that we were going to do it ourselves, but that's
sorry,
what happens sometimes.
Not sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
But that's what happens though. It's just like some of these movies become insanely popular. I mean, even if you guys were to do a podcast like this, it's like you're going to come across some movies that are going to become really popular, and there's going to be too many people who want to cover, and it's like, sorry, I only have enough room for certain people for the show, where if someone already called dibs on it, then that's who it is. But yeah, this has been an episode long in the running, and when you both chose it, Nico and Zeddy, I just thought, okay, I'm kind of curious. Maybe there's something about this that I missed the first time around, and when I saw it finally this morning, before I had to run out and grab errands, I came to this conclusion. I think the first half, I agree with you guys. It is surprisingly impactful and very strong for what it was. Like, the themes and topics are really relevant with going on today in our economic system, even just looking at where we are financially, of like the fact that, we're not able to survive on our own. We kind of have to live within, apartments in of itself, and have to do like, what do you call it? Like a shared, funding of sorts, of like, even some people are like living with their parents now, not because of, for whatever, personal reasons they have. It's just because of a financial issue they have. And that's how this is where we are now within our society. But once we got to the second half of the story, that's where it started losing me. And that's where, for me personally, where I thought, okay, now this is why I don't hold it in such high regard as you guys do, because it teeters into the more respected than admired or loved kind of camp for me, where I have a very small list. It's a very weird list in terms of what's on there now, but films like Babe or The Exorcist or even Drive My Car, there are movies on there, or even Stalker is another one I have on there, where they're films that I respect and appreciate what the filmmaker is trying to say and do within the moment. And there's nothing inherently wrong with the movie as a whole, but I just can't emotionally get invested in the story because again, but it's definitely a movie that I could recommend if you're interested in this kind of movie. If you're a big Paul Schrader fan, which one person was who asked to be on the show, you'll probably love this. You'll probably be like the biggest, because I'm kind of mixed on the guy overall. There's the whole,
that's fair.
Even with like the whole posts he's been doing lately, it's just like, what are you doing, man? But even some of his films I find interesting in that something like Raging Bull or Taxi Driver, there's other elements surrounding his screenplay that I find much more captivating, like the performances, the music, the directing, the whatever style of filmmaking the director's going for. Like, I find that much more interesting than the script itself. With this here, again, I thought the first half was surprisingly impactful and pretty well done for what it was. And Ethan Hawke gives a tremendous performance, which we'll get into shortly. And even Amanda Seyfried's pretty good too for what little she's given in the film. But like I said, yeah, just the second half of the film just kind of turned me off. And weird enough, like the ending in of itself, it's one of those situations where it's like I'm okay with it, I guess, but I'm not as emotionally affected by it like some people would be, because again, at that point, it kind of lost my interest a bit. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So yeah. So I guess we'll get into were there any notes you guys wanted to bring up that we could just sort of dive right into deeply? Because again, this is the kind of movie where we don't need to do a bulletin point discussion. We could just jump at random scenes or anything that really stood out to you, whether it's the performances, the way a scene was written, or something that Paul Schrader did as a filmmaker that you really admired within the film.
Zeddy, why don't you kick it off?
I think what was so fascinating for me, even upon this rewatch, was understanding and I guess realizing how troubled he already was from the beginning. Like we open this film and he's doing like this inner monologue and he's writing in his journal. He says he's doing like this year-long experiment, and then once the year's over, he's like, who knows, like, where my life is gonna be. So on top of this already being like a deconstruction of a man's faith right off the bat, you can tell that, like, he's got these health issues going on with him too. So he's almost like, he's a priest that doesn't want to seek for help, but he wants to, implore others to seek for help. It's like the reverse psychology thing. But I think for me, the conversation that he has with one person was so striking, and he even says in the film it's so exhilarating. I mean, like, he loves the challenge. Like, priests, they don't love to be challenged. They love to challenge other people, but when their faith gets challenged, it's so incredibly powerful, and you just see him like seeing, like he's very uncomfortable, like yet he's like moved by all these like thoughts that this man is presenting to him. And I really do think that, and I understand the second half, Matt, like what you're saying, like how it just maybe doesn't fit your cup of tea. But like for me, it was like once he has that conversation, it's just a spiral downfall of this man's faith. And then once he starts to lose himself, he's going on the internet, he's searching all these things that the man had brought up to him, and then the man, spoiler alerts, commits suicide, and then it's almost like he lost faith, right? So that was just the thing that got to me, is that, and it's incredibly moving now, because like you meet one person today and they can change your life in a matter of minutes, and let alone an hour. So that's the one thing that I always caught too, was that, he was just a priest that lost his way. And it wasn't so much that his faith got lost, it was that he lost faith because of what this man had presented to him, and he didn't want to see it. So that's how I outlooked it. Nico, how about you?
I want to build on a few things that Zeddy said, and then offer some other ones. I love that, Zeddy, you touched on the inner monologue of it all in his journal, because he opens it with a line that essentially says, I won't quote it directly, I'll describe it like this, is when you write about yourself, or when you are writing your thoughts, you don't hold back. You show no mercy, right? Yeah. That's what he says. And I think that strikes me right away when the movie opens, because it's something that I think I was immediately able to reflect on. A lot of things are hard to say out loud. A lot of things are hard to say to people, and our own thoughts towards ourselves are usually the darkest one. And the easiest way to do that is to journal or externalize those thoughts in some other way. So immediately you see this reverend doing that. And like Zeddy says, when growing up, I was taught or looked at the reverend, the pastor, the priest, whomever you will, as having all the answers. And that they are people who are so confident and so sure of what they're doing that they must be the ultimate example of faith, hope, etc. So to then see everything that Reverend Toller is dealing with, and then the conversation with Michael is so striking, because Zeddy took this quote that I wrote down. He says, it was like wrestling with an angel. It was exhilarating. A lot of personal conversations I've had with very religious people, and my relationship with religion is a lot more nuanced. It's not quite black and white, so I won't even say, just for the purpose of this conversation, like where I align or anything like that, because I think that would take away from the point I'm going to make. But most religious people I've spoken to are very sure and are very confident in their own beliefs. So to watch a reverse conversation where the one challenging and questioning it all was impacting this reverend to the point where he was almost enjoying it, right? And I think it also, there's another line that Michael says to him. So then we move away from the religious aspect, and we move to like the world aspect, right, of what's happening to the planet, with climate change specifically. But I could even zoom out and think about all the other things in the world that are arguably worse now than they were in 2017 when this movie came out.
Yeah,
is how could it's a quote along the lines of, what if your child asks you knew this all along, like this is the world you were bringing me into. And immediately the debate is it worth it to bring life into this world? Is it worth it to hold on to life in this world, or are we all doomed? And I think that's a very scary question that is very impactful. So to comment on it, at least the screenplay in this first half, I just think it's so well written and some of these quotes are so haunting. They're bangers. You know what I mean? For me, like that one, and when you're writing about yourself, show no mercy, or it was exhilarating, right? It makes you also so interested in not only the conflict, but I think the character of Reverend Toller.
Yeah, and what you just said, Nico, about the idea of whether or not the idea of us knowing the world that's in now and being okay with bringing a child into it, that in itself, that was the most impactful message of it all. Because I feel like Paul Schrader, like I said, as much as I do want to dogpile on the guy sometimes, he can be a pretty brilliant, idea man or in of itself, where he's got a fair amount of interesting screenplays he's written over the years. And even though some of them don't work some of them work less than others. Whenever they do work, again, something like Raging Bull, Taxi Driver, or even to a certain degree they work in a way that stick with the audience. And I could see why he has gained a following over the years, even though I'm a little bit sick and tired of his shtick, just because, especially with this whole like inner monologue thing. Like, because at the time of this recording, I only got a chance to rewatch Taxi Driver. And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, okay. So another man struggling his way in this world is writing a journal. Gee, I wonder who wrote this script. but that kind of storytelling tool can work though. Like everyone has those kind of bags of tricks, so to speak, that work in their own way. Christopher Nolan has his own bag of tricks that work in certain ways. Wes Anderson, Stanley Kubrick. Paul Thomas Anderson's another guy who has his own bags of tricks. And when they work really well. And this is another case where it clearly worked for you guys, where even though I see some of the issues and some of the repetition of what Paul Schrader has done in some of his other films, even what he's done afterwards with like the card counter, and there was another film he did afterwards, where it's like the bags of tricks can work if it's done in the right timing and the right way. But that is an aspect, like you said though, Nico, where is it okay for us bringing a child into this world and having that knowledge about it ahead of time? Because it is one thing if you bring a child into this world and you aren't aware of the world. That's one thing. But to have that preconceived notion of knowing where you are in the world and being okay with this, it's like, okay, that is kind of like a morally gray, kind of dark question to ask yourself in of itself. And speaking of which, though, I think we could all agree that Ethan Hawke gives a fantastic performance in this as the Reverend.
Yeah.
Do either of you want to take the reins on this as to what you thought of Ethan Hawke's performance on this?
I mean, I'll be quick, and if Zeddy wants to go further again, I think he's incredible and should have been nominated. But I guess we're going to talk about that now.
We can talk about the nomination thing, what happened there, but the performance itself, what did you think of it?
I love it because it's so layered, it's so nuanced, and it's like he's holding back this disgust and despair, and the moment where the performance reaches, I think, incredible levels for me is, right, he's dark, he's a little awkward, he's a little quiet, his inner monologue goes crazy. It's the scene, somebody says early on, when he visits Abundant Life, like, you're good with kids, the kids love you. And you hear that line and you're like, this guy's drinking at his desk at night, writing about how the world's gonna end, and he's disgusted at himself. And the other, what's Esther? Like, their relationship is very awkward, right? When the kids visit the church and he shows them the Underground Railroad trap door, but at first he starts being very tour guidey.
Yeah. And
then he makes it interactive for the kids, and it's beautiful. He's incredible with the kids. He's telling them to look at the door and what's your name? Can you come help me? And just his whole energy. It's like the most positive he is during the movie is with these kids. And then he immediately snaps back into, how about, can you just imagine a family waiting down there so close together, hearing the foots of the soldiers, wondering if they might die. And it's like, Jesus, brother, I had you for a moment. And so like, that's a moment where he this performance adds a whole new layer and completely changes for like a little bit of time. And then the minute he moves away from it, you like, for me at least, I want that again from him. I think the best thing an actor can do for me are performances that really stick with me, or where there are moments or choices they make that I'm obsessed with and I wish I could have saw more of. But the beauty is that little change for him is only supposed to be, and it only works in that little scene. And that's like the gut punch of it all. And that's what makes it so good. And yes, he should have got in over Viggo Mortensen, but we're going to talk later.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Hold it together, man. I know.
I'm trying. It's hard.
Because I could do a whole rant on lead actor, but we'll get into that later.
We'll
Zeddy,
get there.
on Ethan Hawke's performance, you agree with Nico as well?
Yeah, I think he's incredible. I mean, not to completely take everything that he said, but like, it just, on top of it being like a really quiet, subtle performance, it is very deeply layered, because again, he does represent that reverend, that priest that we kind of like grew up, or people that are Catholics or went to Catholic grade school that really saw most of their life, meaning that, like, the priest isn't always this enthusiastic, outgoing person. Sometimes they're just there to, do God's work, I guess, right? To perform the mass that you go to, right? And then if you need to go to confession or something, they're there for you, right? So this idea that this is all like a smokescreen, meaning that we only see what we see with the priest, versus like we don't see what goes on behind closed doors. So this idea that there's a conflicted reverend that's out there, and like he's putting on this show for his his ministry, but like deep inside he has all these conflicting feelings and thoughts about what the world that he's actually trying to teach other people about actually really is, or that he thinks he is. And I think that he represents that average reverend that, like, again, we've all been there in our life, whether we've lost a family member, we've lost a friend, or we get a bad grade in school or something like that, and we start to doubt, like, well, why would God do this to me? I worked really hard, right?
Yeah.
And you go to the priest and you're like, why would God let this happen? It's so going to be moving, and like sometimes you're led to believe they just don't have the right answers. They just don't have the answers. Everything happens for a reason, right? And like that's what this represented to me. It was. So I thought he was incredible, the way that he just went about it.
Yeah. Can I just offer one thing that I think will play well for content? Yeah. Zeddy, you bring that up because us going to Catholic grade school and different Catholic high schools, but same Catholic grade school where all this kind of foundationally came from. And it's so funny because like we would go to confession and like there would be several times a year where we go to church and things, and we had various assignments even when we were really, really, really little where we had to like confront things. But the best was, Zeddy, do you remember Father Rosemeyer?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Matt, you would be, are you Catholic?
Yeah.
Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. We would be, I just think this is, we used to fight to who would get in Father Rosemeyer's line for Holy Confession. And honestly, I will say this, God rest his soul. He was legendary. But when there got to a point where he was so elderly that we fought to be in his confession line, because he would either be like falling asleep or he would get you out of there. Like he would stop you. I would go in there like, so Father, I blah, blah, blah. Like one thing, I would say I was kind of rude to my younger sister, and he would stop me and be like, all right, that's 3 Our Fathers, you're good. And he would just be out of there. But when you had the other priest, he like made you say more, and you would be in there for like 20 minutes. Whereas Father Rosemeyer's line, his line was like a revolving door. It's like say one thing, he gives you the 3 or 5 to say. You're out of there. You're back to recess or whatever, where everyone else stuck in the other line. So we would race to the church to get into his line first. So anyway, I just want to bring that up as like a cute, funny thing that we used to do.
That's funny.
So true.
Yeah, that's funny. But yeah, no, I agree with you guys. Like Ethan Hawke is giving such an astounding performance. I don't really have much else new to say about the performance, because there's a reason why Ethan Hawke is obviously a multi-talented actor in of himself, because not only has he acted in movies, but he's also a writer in of himself. He's written a couple of screenplays, 2 of which have already gotten lone screenplay nominees, and I'll cover that on the show down the road. But you could see why so many people, especially in the industry, want him to succeed, because again, you see his roles in stuff like Training Day, Boyhood, this, and then even his cameo in Glass Onion is another one where it's like had such range and so many different roles that he does, to where it's like, wow, this guy is really interesting, and he's doing everything he can to challenge himself as an actor, and he's not always like, every once in a while he'll probably do like a bigger budgeted movie. I'm not even sure, outside of like maybe the Moon Knight.
Yeah, I was gonna say Moon Knight.
Outside of that, I don't know if
he's good in there too. He's very compelling. It's not a good show in my opinion, but he's good in there for most of it, at least I think.
But I'm trying to even think if there's any other like intellectual properties he was a part of outside of that and Glass Onion, because I think for the most part he's just been challenging himself as an actor and just doing other things. Yeah, he'll do a shitty movie here and there, but he always tries his best to make it work, even if the character doesn't stick at all. And thankfully, this is a character that is complex, and even that downward spiral that his character goes on is still an interesting turn in of itself, especially when he's talking with Esther, I think it was, or Esther, and she's asking him about how's your results going, and he's like like he's repulsed and disgusted by her, and he says to her she's a roadblock that he's trying to get over, and she keeps getting in his way, and he does that as a way of just turning everyone away from him and being so, again, gloomy and depressed with the world. And yeah, it's a really complex performance.
I'm forgetting all the horror movies he was a part of. Sinister,
Black
The Black
Phone.
Yep. He's in one of the Purges.
He's
Is
in
he
the
in
first one. Yeah, he's in the first one.
There was a run there like early 2010s where it's like every scary movie he was in. I think there's another one too that I kept being like, wow, we're seeing Ethan Hawke in all these scary in all these like decent budget horror movies. But yeah, those are well said, Matt, about just his career. Yeah. He's in The Northman, right? Like that's a nice fun role for him too. But hey, we might see him strike big with Linklater's movie this year, right?
Oh, isn't it Blue Moon?
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, you never know. For all we know, this could be like another flop. I mean, Linklater. That's a whole other story we can get into about Linklater and the Oscars.
It's a musical biopic.
Oh,
anyway.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, all right. Then it's either a bust or a bust. So there you go. That's that.
It's a musical biopic directed by Richard Linklater and is being distributed by Sony Pictures Classics.
Yeah. Well.
Oh well, then it's getting multiple.
That was such a nerd
I don't know.
maybe
I'll tell you.
Maybe we should ask the Outrun and Saoirse Ronan what happened with her.
Ouch.
You know, such a yeah. So, anyways,
but if she had Linklater, I bet she'd get in.
I don't know. So, anyway, before we get too sidetracked with this, was there anything else about the movie that you guys wanted to talk about with First Reformed?
Yeah. So I think. So I know we mainly talk about screenplay here, the writing. I will give you, Matt, that I do think the second half can lose people. For me, what makes the second half really work is the direction. I'm a sucker for the 4:3 aspect ratio. If that's in the film I'm watching, we're starting at like a 7 out of 10. I'm just saying that. But one, I love how compartmentalized and like claustrophobic it makes certain moments of the movie, especially close-ups on him, other characters, his journal, and then the suicide vest. The first time it cuts that at his house, like the screen just pushes on it so much, and you sit with it. And I just think the direction and the cinematography makes the second half of this thing so thrilling. And I think it is I do think the first half are where the themes are more obvious. The second half, you can lose that. But then this movie becomes a very tense thriller where I don't know what the hell this guy's going to do.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it compelling. Like, where did this whole journey put him? And it put him in this very scary, over-the-top, unthinkable place. And yet, I can see how this specific character got there. And I think the secret MVP of this movie is Amanda Seyfried, because even though I don't think her material is like that strong, I personally take this away from the movie, and I actually haven't listened to or read too many people's thoughts on this movie. It's kind of an experience that I've tried to keep really personal. Is I think the answer to all these questions are we three, right? Other people are what's worth fighting for and living for, and loneliness and isolation are probably the worst things that somebody could go through, because when you have to sit in your own darkness for so long, you can potentially go to the worst possible place. And that's why I think her character works, because she already feels lonely when her husband's still alive. And when it ends, a lot of people also seem to gravitate towards each other when they have like shared trauma. And I think these two characters, and I love the levitation scene, because she is finding something worth living for in Reverend Toller, and I think vice versa. And I know the ending for some people, them like making out while he has like the wire all over his body and he's bleeding and he's gonna drink like Drano or whatever. But I think it's beautiful, because if she is not there that day, everyone's dying there. Right? Like, let's be honest. And I think that shows you how important she is and how He didn't want her there because I think he knew that, like, I think he always knew if she was there, he wouldn't do it and he wouldn't die and he wouldn't have to live in this terrible world anymore. And then when she comes back there, I think he gets this feeling of like, I'm worth something, she's worth something, and like however weird we want to make that scene. I also think the scene where they levitate when they lay on each other, which I know is weird for a lot of people because it is, like, let's be honest.
It is
but
weird.
People do weird. I don't want to put a judgment word on it. People do all sorts of things when they're at very, very low, vulnerable, sad, scary moments.
You're not thinking in the moment.
Exactly. The
Right.
blocking of that scene where she knocks and you see the chair in the middle of the room and like, why is there a chair in the middle of the room? And he's writing in his journal, he pours some more whiskey, then he goes off camera, he opens the door, she walks in and sits there, and the way those characters move and then they move closer to each other, he squats down. Like the blocking and the movement in that still frame I think is unbelievable. And that's one of my favorite scenes of the movie. So I think technically the movie soars, and I think it works pretty well as like a dark psychological thriller by the end of it. At the sacrifice of some of the stronger writing in the first half, I think it delivers in terms of like, let's make this movie kind of slap you across the face and stay with you with its imagery, with its performances, with everything. So I know that this is the lone screenplay nominee podcast.
Sure.
And I think the writing is very, very strong, but I also think it is a very well-rounded film, start to finish, all avenues.
But again, I do encourage guests whenever we talk about whether it's a lone screenplay nominee or winner. I do encourage guests to bring up any other points they want to bring up about the acting, the directing, the editing, the cinematography. Because that maybe from a quality standpoint, that maybe is what could help a film get into the lone screenplay nomination.
Absolutely.
Because like we had a guest before, we were talking about Hiroshima Amor, where the acting is what held that film together, and that was like another year where it's like very competitive year, and it's like the screenplay category is kind of weak, so that's probably why this happened, was because of how strong the performances was, and they just barely were in like number 6, number 7 that year for the acting category. So so like from a quality standpoint, maybe that's a reason why some of these films get lone screenplay nominations, but it just all depends.
I feel like a lot of the time that's what happens. Like Zeddy and I both really, really like Coda, but like Coda being in the screenplay category, like there were better written movies that year.
Sure. Yeah.
Outside of the category of 5, but especially when you're a favorite to win in other places, you'll see yourself
Right.
in the screenplay category. So I think that's a brilliant point to bring up, Matt.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Zeddy, were there any other points that you wanted to bring up about the movie itself?
Yeah, I do think Amanda Seyfried's Mary is actually the secret MVP of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I say this upon rewatch because again, like even like when I watched the beginning of the movie, that couple is there in the church. So like I'm letting people like, were they just seeking him out? Like were they targeting him? Like it really kind of focuses on her more than I think him, and he kind of just shows up. Like it's like, oh hey, I have this husband. I need you to talk to him for me. Can you do that? Because I think she's really facilitating everything that goes on with him. Like especially like she sets up the meetup with the husband. Then the husband commits suicide. Then, like, this connection, this deeper connection begins to form with the two of them, that being Mary and obviously the Reverend, Toller. And it's like, the more that we kind of dive into their relationship, it starts to really become this thing of, and again, because I do think that when I look at the end of the movie, it's like, okay, it is a little bit disturbing that you're literally like, okay, maybe this priest, this Reverend, gives up everything, gives up his faith for a woman to be involved with the woman. It's a little bit more deeply disturbing than that. I fully admit that, but I do think that her character shows up in all the pivotal moments of when he starts to unravel, and I think that it's so fascinating because you can look at it a variety of different ways, right? Like she's pregnant, she's about to give birth to a child in this world. He's there for her a lot, and it's like this relationship. It's like it's awkward. It's kind of like heartwarming, but then again, it's like I don't know really what to make of it. Because again, it's like that couple and what they do to him is so deeply disturbing. That's like I really don't know, because really we don't know. And I know I'm rambling here, but like I really don't know what Mary's like ideologies were in the movie. Like I don't know, like what like was she a part of it? Did her husband corrupt her? Like was Toller making her a better person?
We do
I
know.
really don't know, and that's what's so fascinating. I feel like about her character specifically,
I remember.
and the screenplay.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I do remember she had stated that she did share the beliefs of her husband, but not to the point of wanting to kill herself because she wanted to live.
Yeah.
Outside of not just having this child, but just wants to live to begin with. But she did strongly agree with her husband, which I recalled she said. But you're right. We actually don't know before Reverend Toller meets up with the couple as to like where she stood on everything outside of that one, conversation.
Yeah, because I know she mentioned that she grew up with the church too. So there was something she always felt connected to, but you're right, it's never expressly stated what or where, or like is she just saying that to him? But something to reinforce what you both said is I think she's actually the most well-rounded character of the three because she's the only one who's not extreme.
Yeah.
And she's willing to both exist in this world and understand it and want to fight for some of it, but also wants to live. And her wanting to bring a child into this world shows you, I think personally, she has more faith than Reverend Toller.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's compelling for him is how she handles everything and how she's looking to move forward after the death. Whereas we see what happened to Toller is he didn't. And one more thing thematically that I want to think is very strong in the writing. I just remember this now. The whole idea of, we're not taking over the world, or we're not taking care of the world, will God forgive them for destroying his creation? The greatest gift that God gives us is our bodies. And he is allowing himself to deteriorate. I mean, he's dipping his food in whiskey to put it down. He's putting whiskey in the medicine. How many times does Esther say, like, you need to take care of yourself? Someone needs to take care of you because you are letting your temple deteriorate. And I think that's something that's very, very strong in this movie is how self-destructive he is individually, directly looks at, because we're part of nature and creation too. So he's not protecting his own world, his body, his temple, and humanity's not, taking care of the world. So I actually think he is really, and it's a little on the nose with how many times that they say, like, you need to take care of yourself, I will say, or like his conversation with the doctor where they kind of tell him, like, stop drinking. Like, it's kind of obvious, but I think it hammers the point home and makes the character and the theme so fascinating. It's like, yeah, we're also watching someone who is letting himself die.
Well,
and yeah,
I thought it was also funny too when Cedric the Entertainer, he strolls into his office later on about like the hour and a half mark, and he's like, "Are you sure you're okay, Reverend Toller? Because you don't look good." And I'm like, "Does he? Because he looks about the same that he did when he started."
Yeah, he looks the same.
Like, unless if he was like, I don't know, more flushed, or if he had lost a lot of weight.
Coiffed enough.
Yeah. Like his hair, had a different haircut. It's like, okay, but he looked about the same when we started the movie.
That's that's a moment I'll give you too, where I'm like, there's not like, I was like, oh, no, I think he looks exactly the same. I think the beauty of him is like we see him in these dark moments, these alcoholic moments, and then in other moments he looks like fine. One last thing I wanna say, because I keep remembering things. Sorry, man.
No, you're good.
Is I also think what this movie does well, and if you are very religious or part of one of these types of churches and you're listening, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm saying what the movie's showing me is Cedric the Entertainer and then Ed Bulk, I think his name is. They are right in charge of the church, in charge of the celebration, and they feel farther away from God than Reverend Toller, right? They say things that God's important, but they're more into this self-indulgent sort of celebration stuff. They're very vain characters, and while they are celebrating the reconsecration, it's all about everybody else. And then you see how once again a little on the nose, but I think it works. Ed Bulk's character contributes so much and is kind of the head of this church in a way, this massive money making church, and also he has the energy company that's so responsible, right? Is one example of this stuff. So I also think it's compelling that even the characters who on the surface are supposed to be like the most religious in the movie have all these other reasons that they're involved with the church, it appears. And I think that makes it challenging too, is like who in this movie is really, connected to, God and faith, to where there are shows out there where there is other form of storytelling, like The Righteous Gemstones right now, or ridiculous comedy, but it kind of shows you like a family who's in charge of this mega church, like what they're actually doing and what that actually looks like for them is, a lot of people would say is so far away from what the scripture and the text say. And I just think that's what's compelling too. I do think it depends on where you fall with certain beliefs though, because I think if you are very strongly in some camp, you would probably hate this movie. But
well, that's
what art's for.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. It's subjective. But I also did want to say the character Ed, he had a lot of balls to say, do you know the voice? Do you know what God's saying in your? Do you know what the voice of God is telling you? And I'm like, that's kind of a kind of a ballsy move for you to say, especially with you being like such an industrialist and you're causing a lot of pollution. And you're like, oh, whatever, it's just the financial gain, and then they talk about how we don't want any political establishments going on in this thing. It's like,
I do think that line is funny. And maybe it's unintentionally funny, is when he's like, so we're not going to get political, right? Yeah. Because, like, of course they would say that before the meeting. Right. Like, of course there would be some, like, vetting process of no other messages. It's all about the church today. You know what I mean?
All about God.
Yeah.
Get your mind off of what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that so far we've had a pretty interesting discussion with the film, and it sounds like one of us is the odd man out on this, just like we always are with these movies.
I wonder who.
Yeah, I wonder. It's usually
not all the time though. Yeah. Wait. Oh, I guess we can't talk about some because they're not lone screenplay. But if we were talking about like Zone of Interest or Anatomy of a Fall, I think the dynamic would change. But.
Yeah. Slowly
that's neither nor here nor and if we're talking about what's something I like that you both don't like. Oh, you both like Anora more than me. That would be a funny.
That is a really interesting question. What's the movie that Nico likes more than Zeddy and I? I guess we'll have to figure that out after the show to be like.
Is it Elvis? No,
you both
Zeddy
liked
likes
Elvis.
it too.
No, yeah, you both liked it. Yeah, well,
I'm trying to think of like since we've known each other, it's easier to talk about.
I know Matt's higher on the Whale than you and I are. I know that was one.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah,
even though that's not like a lone.
But that's him. Like what's something I'm higher on than you both? We'll have to think about it.
Regardless, we'll think about it after the show because we're still recording.
It's probably a comic book movie.
It probably is. But yeah, outside of so overall, my final thoughts on the movie, and then I'll jump over to Zeddy and then Nico. I think overall it's an interesting movie. First Reformed, I respect it, I admire it. I think the performances are pretty strong. Paul Schrader has a pretty solid first half on his hands, but where, as we've already pointed out, the second half he kind of falters a bit for me, and it's like, okay, it turns more into like respect and admire, but I'm not really head over heels for this. But we've already spoiled a fair amount of the movie, but if you're already listening to this and you haven't seen it yet,
oh yeah, watch it.
Sure, you should watch it. And if it's your kind of thing, you should watch this, especially if you're a Paul Schrader fan, because I do think this is one of his better movies, I've been told, even just from a writing standpoint. So
I would agree.
What do you think about you? What about you, Zeddy?
Yeah, I think that this movie's incredible. I think not only does it flip the whole perception of being Catholic, of believing in religion, of wanting to go to church and believing in a reverend and a priest is always there for me. It flips that whole concept on its head. I do think that, again, if you are somebody that has these conflicting ideas about what religion is, what being Catholic or, anything like that, being involved in religion is, I would maybe go in a little hesitation, right? I would obviously be of the right age. You should watch this movie. I don't, obviously, definitely be in the right mindset to watch this movie, even in particular. But again, I saw this movie old enough to have been fully out of all Catholic grade school and high school and school of that nature. And I walked away really, really getting a whole entire view of what the world actually is. Now, I this movie didn't change me. It didn't change my views of how I view the world, but it did open my eyes. And as a film fan and as somebody that tries to stay up with current events and things like that, this movie was very profound. I use that word quite a lot in this episode, but it was quite profound and it was quite moving, and it was very scary, right? And if you can handle all three of those adjectives, I do that. It's a journey worth exploring. I will say that. So, yeah.
Nico?
I'll say, in my opinion, I think this movie's kind of like a cinephile's dream, because I think it does a lot of things that I think like hardcore film, maybe not all, but like I think a lot of film fans would really like it. There's a big, for me, it really works because I have a very strong personal connection to it. A lot of things I identify with, and I think technically it's awesome. So I think it's well worth the watch if you're open to, deeper psychological thrillers with heavy subject matter. I think you really can't go wrong with this. If you like Ethan Hawke, watch it. If you're just an Amanda Seyfried fan, maybe stay away. But but I think I don't think you'll get what you're looking for.
I don't think any Mamma Mia fangirls out there would watch this. So
if
you can watch Jennifer's Body for that.
I don't think don't come to this if you're looking for her. Really, really solid movie. I do still think it's one of A24's best. In terms of films that they've put out. If we're gonna do it, if we were to do like an A24 list in terms of films they've distributed, I think it would probably be in my 10 somewhere still.
Oh wow,
I do.
Oh
yeah,
nice.
Same here.
Yeah. I'll have to look through to see what else they've done, but I recall they made a fair amount of pretty solid films.
A lot of good ones,
including
a lot of good ones,
including their recent Oscar-winning movie, The Brutalist, which is pretty good.
Yes,
I would say.
Yes.
That's a movie that we all agree is fantastic. But enough about that.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump right into our awards discussion. Before I do, I want to give a little bit of a setup for our audience. By the way, guys, this will be an episode we're going to be running a little bit longer on than most, but, that's what happens when you get two other people on the podcast. And we have a lot of knowledge on awards section, so let's just get right into it. So we keep mentioning this was a 2017 release, and some people are like, wait, Matt, it came out theatrically 2018. What are you talking about? It premiered, so First Reformed premiered at the Venice Film Festival on August 31st, 2017. It had screened that same year at Telluride and Toronto International Film Festival that same year. A24 bought the distributing rights that September and had held off on releasing it until May of 2018. Remember, at this time, they had Lady Bird and The Disaster Artist on their hands for awards contentions. So there was no way that was going to be in the conversation for, as like a priority for them, especially when they're trying to get those two films off the ground.
Yep.
And then, released in May of 2018. It was nominated for several awards and got Gotham nominations, Gotham Film Award nominations, I should say. It got 4 Independent Spirit Award nominations, winning lead actor for Ethan Hawke, 2 Critics' Choice Award nominations, which it won the original screenplay category, kind of a weird category we'll talk about in a moment. And it also received the National Board of Review Award for Original Screenplay, as well as being on the top 10 films list of 2018 for both American Film Institute and National Board of Review as well. Despite the enormous critics' push for this within the awards race, it only garnered a lone screenplay nomination, which was the first one for its writer/director Paul Schrader. It's very strange that this is his first and only Oscar nomination. But
it's very strange.
I digress. So, since I've already had Nico on the show twice, I'm not going to answer this question to him. I'm going to throw the baton to you, Nico. I want to ask, why do you think this ended up getting its lone screenplay nomination, and what the hell happened with this original screenplay lineup?
So I'll comment on the former, and then we could all talk about the latter. I feel like the audience scores. I feel like it's a movie. I think the Rotten Tomatoes score is like very low. I think it's a 69, if I have this right. And I just think it's a movie. Like, actually, I'll be honest, Matt, I feel like voters had your sort of exact take, which is like, I respect it, I admire it, don't love it though.
Yeah.
And I think that year, there were a couple other movies that just had so much more audience passion, Bohemian Rhapsody, Green Book, that end up being two really significant players. So I think that is what make it easy for it to kind of fall a bit. In terms of I feel like that's the answer, right? It's trying to think of another movie it reminds me of in the last 2 years that's just like a massive critics darling, a massive indie push that like that shows up at Gotham, the indie spirit shows up at Critics' Choice, right? But then as those major awards keep coming around, it doesn't get anything. Although the original screenplay nomination shows me it was close enough. You know what I mean? Where like,
Yeah.
what was Ethan Hawke? Probably 6 or 7.
Maybe. I actually do recall there was one other film in the last couple of years I did cover for the show already that resembles a little bit close to what happened with this, although it did better at Golden Globes, I would argue, than this did, because this got no Golden Globe nominations. May, December.
You know, that's a good comparison.
Because
It's a very good comparison.
that was another film where people at the time were like, is this going to be Netflix's priority push? But we all knew it was going to be Maestro that season. It wasn't going to be May, December.
Yeah.
Or even if you know, some of us here liked May, December more than Maestro, it was like, no. We all know how this game is going to get played. You know, don't try to bullshit yourself, okay? But yeah, I agree though. I actually forgot. Yeah, the audience score, it's 69 by the way for First Reformed for the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and meanwhile, fucking Green Book is 91%.
That's what I'm saying. I really do think it's that, because when you look at, and also, wait, let me just make sure I have this right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It also wasn't the case yet where they needed to use all 10 spots.
Yep.
So
It's a sliding scale.
I do think if they needed to fill 10 spots, it's in there. But
I
that
don't.
might be my revisionist history. Okay, wait, then we could play the game of what you think would be in there instead, which will be fun.
I'll tell you what I thought was number 9 and 10. Cold War was number 9 because it got the director nomination.
Okay. Yes.
And I've even talked with Josh Parham about this before, even with my beautiful Andrette, but even the year of Zone of Interest, in a year of 10, which they went back to a couple years ago, if you are in director, you are getting into picture. It does not matter whether or not this is a divisive movie. It doesn't matter if it's an artsy pick. Drive My Car made it in there with less televised precursor buzz for picture, and it still got into picture and director. And I would argue Cold War got in despite doing pretty well at BAFTAs, or at least as well as it did there. Number 10, it's a little bit tricky because I don't know what was even in the screenplay. What was an adapted? Because I'm trying to even think.
Adapted was Black Klansman, The Ballad of Buster Scruggs by the Coens, Can You Ever Forgive Me, If Beale Street Could Talk, and A Star Is Born. Oh, would it have been Beale Street? Do
Maybe.
you think that gets 10?
Maybe.
I feel like that has a chance, right? Because you had, did you have
Regina King?
Regina King? Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That would make a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, because I do recall even something like Sing Sing. I mean, granted, Sing Sing didn't have any like producer star power that If Beale Street had. So maybe it could have gotten in. And Barry Jenkins is a more known Academy figure than Greg, the guy who directed Sing Sing.
Looking back at this year, I'm going to retract my statement that it would have been in a year of 10, because you're right. Cold War, I always forget about. Yeah, Cold War would have definitely been in there. And I think if Beale Street would have, I think, had a good shot to be 10, because Regina King, even though, I mean, I'll still argue this year, I think A Real Pain was 11, and it was the I'm Still Here thing that pushed it out.
And Nickel Boys.
And Nickel Boys.
Yeah.
And so that they decided to go with just the more technical sort of achievement. I think that's where they rewarded Ramel Ross. But not talk about this year, because it's done and over with, and we talked about that too much this year.
But speaking of bullshit moves, though, Green Book won screenplay over the favorite First Reformed, Roma, Vice. I mean, Vice was never going to win screenplay. Roma was never winning. I don't know, Zeddy. Do you want to jump in on what the hell happened there? Why was it the favorite wasn't able to win screenplay?
Well, they don't like Yorgos, so we can just. I know he didn't write it, but
No.
I know Tony McNamara. I get it. I think you answered the question for me. It was the Green Book year. I happen to somebody that actually likes the movie. Whether or not I agree with it being a screenplay winner, that's a whole other topic. Because I still think this movie is a better screenplay than Green Book, no question. But it was the Green Book year. There's always that one film that's just unbeatable, it's undeniable, and it happened to just be that year.
Yeah.
It's always the case.
And
always the case.
And I think the biggest lesson we learned, Nico, that some of us didn't learn this lesson this past year, is that in a divided race for screenplay, you go with the strongest film overall. And this is why, this was the year for me. I don't know about you guys, but this was the year that I said, okay, I need to take my personal opinions about the film, take it out of my brain, and just predict by logic. What's the strongest film of the lineup here that has a better shot at winning the category? And we saw it with Green Book. We saw it with Belfast, which Nico was on my ass about, which I thought, oh, there's no way Belfast is going to win screenplay. Licorice Pizza is going to finally get PTA's Oscar. It didn't, and now you know why I didn't go with the lone BAFTA winner. Because just because you have the BAFTA win doesn't guarantee you the Oscar. You need to have more than just BAFTA to win screenplay. You need to be the strongest film in the lineup. You need to have another precursor, or in the case of Return of the King, you need to be the best picture frontrunner. And the favorite wasn't, unfortunately, which is a shame because I think that's a better script than Green Book. Speaking of which, where's the eject button for Zeddy over here on somebody who likes Green Book?
You wish.
I'm kidding. I want to ask you guys, though, because I didn't get a chance to watch this other A24 movie. Do you guys know without looking this up, do you know what won the Writers Guild Award for Original Screenplay?
This year?
Yeah, this season. For this season we're talking about.
It was another A24 movie?
It was.
Was it really?
Yeah, it wasn't First Reformed because that was ineligible at the Writers Guild.
What else came out that year?
Again, without looking
Was it
up.
8th grade?
Yes, you are right.
It was 8th grade,
Yeah,
right? Because he beat... Oh, well, you're mad about this.
Yeah.
He beat Cooper for DGA First Feature, too.
He did,
that's right.
yeah, and...
Bo Burnham did.
Yeah,
I like that. I like 8th grade,
Oh,
so
I
that's a
love
cool
that
win.
movie.
Yes.
Yeah,
I can't comment too much on the 8th grade win over at DGA, but I will say he won the DGA first time, and he won the Writers Guild. And when he went on stage for the Writers Guild Award, he's like, have fun at the Oscars, losers.
Yeah, you know what? That movie is so good, and that
So
could have
good.
been.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I just don't
Really like 8th grade.
I just don't understand, again, outside of what we've already just spewed out to our audience, I don't get it how Green Book just wins Golden Globe. You lose Critics' Choice, understandably. You lose the BAFTA, and you lose the Writers Guild Award, and you still win that fucking Oscar for screenplay.
It's crazy because looking back, remembering that
wasn't
year,
traditional at
and
all.
there's things I remember more than others throughout the year, but just having it all in front of me, how didn't Roma win this? You know what I mean? Because Alfonso Cuarón wins director,
Yeah.
right? And then I know a lot of people thought it was going to be the Best Picture movie, and then that didn't happen. It was Green Book, but what was it? Just voting down the ballot in terms of the movie that made them feel the best? That's there's not many answers I have for you. It's just they knew Mahershala Ali was winning,
Yeah.
and so more people watched it. I wonder if just nobody watched no, do I think there's a universe where First Reform would have won this? No, I think there's another universe where The Favorite or Roma wins. But I just think, people just voted Green Book because it was
A24
easy.
wasn't also there yet. They're not the studio
That's a good point.
back then than they are now.
That's a good
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
because when you said, Matt, earlier that they were
Yeah.
really running with Lady Bird and disaster artists, I'm thinking about, wow, nowadays they could get any movie. They dropped one movie this year because they had a better option
Yeah, The
later in the
Brutalist.
year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they've won their fair share of Oscars now. To where, now when they acquire a movie, or when they put out a movie late in the year, you're like, okay, this is going to be a player. And but I just think Green Book was It honestly feels like it was Coda before Coda in a bit of a different way.
God, yeah. Except I would say
Where,
this is
like,
worse than Coda.
I think it's significantly worse than Coda, and
Yeah.
like all the information that came out since
Yes.
Green Book released and won these awards, it's like, wow, that was some propaganda that movie you shared with us.
Yeah.
It's not even authentic. At least Coda, you're like, oh, the cast, Troy Kotzer, Marlee Matlin, right? There's a lot of history with these actors, and it was feel good. And at the time, the world needed something feel good. At this, it's like, man, there's a lot. This season, come on, guys. Green Book?
Excuse my French for saying this, but it was the one movie in the category that didn't have voters reaching for the gun and blowing their brains out.
Well, that too. Like, in that original category, like, I could see a voter being like, well, Green Book made me feel the best. Check mark. Done.
Yeah.
Over with.
Done. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna get greasy on my blanket. Whatever. Fuck off with that winner. Seriously, that was bullshit. I hate it.
What a ridiculous.
Yeah. Speaking of ridiculous wins, you want to bring up lead actor too? While we're at it.
No, I don't actually.
No.
I think we could stop talking now.
I think we should. I think we should talk about lead actor. So I want to bring up a really good. So I'm looking through right now. I actually take when I do the Oscars, and these boys know this too. When I do the Oscars for certain categories, especially with the acting ones, I list out the major televised precursors, so like SAG, BAFTA, Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, Oscar. And Ethan Hawke, I mentioned, he only got Independent Spirit Award win. He got a Critics' Choice nomination, and he missed SAG and Golden Globes. And unfortunately, right then and there, that pretty much told us that, like, yeah, Ethan Hawke might be finished looking back on it. And BAFTAs didn't even go for it at all, and they're like, okay, yeah, you guys are screwed. And they ended up with Christian Bale for Vice, Willem Dafoe for A Attorney's Gate, Viggo Mortensen for Green Book, Bradley Cooper, A Star Is Born, and Rami Malek for Bohemian fucking Rhapsody. I just this is like, out of all the lead actor wins since I've been covering the Oscars since like 2013, 2014, I've never been this pissed off about a win. Maybe since like Eddie Redmayne for Theory of Everything, but at least with that one, I remembered, like, one, I understand why he kind of won, but also at least he had palpable chemistry with him and Felicity Jones, also another actress who's had two of her lead acting co-stars win Oscars, and she doesn't. But this win, it's just so, like, talk about buyer's remorse with this, where it's like everything about it it's just so vile and disgusting, and in my opinion, it's slightly worse than Green Book somehow, which is like a weird feat to accomplish in of itself. Especially when you have the sound mixing and sound editing win, which are terrible wins, but whatever. And then you have, in my opinion, the worst editing winner of all time. It's
bad.
Like, I can't, like,
that's bad.
At least with some of these other editing winners, and I've been circling over the last couple weeks, even in between episodes, I've been circling around to some of the previous editing winners and nominees. Like, Z is a movie I think is worthy of the editing win, because you could see not only what it's talking about politically, but even how, for a socially relevant movie, it is, even on a filmmaking standpoint, it feels like a modern movie, despite it being coming out, you know, having it being released in like 1969. And it still feels like a modern thriller in of itself. Honora is another one, which is like, okay, I understand why it won editing. We may, you know, some of us may not agree with the win, but at least we understood why it won. But with this one, it makes no sense as to why this one editing at the Oscar. Again, it's the worst one in the category. I can't think of a lesser quality contender of a winner than Bohemian Rhapsody. Even when I showed my brother this a couple years ago, and the only reason why he agreed to watching it was so that way we would watch Rocket Man afterwards. And even he was like 30 minutes into Bohemian Rhapsody, and he's more of like a normie film audience goer type of guy to begin with. He doesn't even go to the movies that often. He's like, yeah, the editing in this kind of sucks. And I'm like, thank you, right? Like, I didn't even have to say anything, and he knew how off the pacing was. Like, at times it's trying to be, like, it's just overcutting for the sake of cutting for a very slow, quiet moment, but it's weirdly, like, patient when it needs to have that rhythm and energy to it. it's so bizarre that this even won editing, let alone get nominated. But then again, we had a really shitty editing lineup to begin with, so yeah. And then obviously the lead actor win is atrocious. I hate that Rami Malek won, and it's such a miscast performance. If he had been like a lone acting nominee, like Bryan Cranston and Trumbo, fuck it, whatever. But the fact that he beat out Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born, and that motherfucker is still 0 for 12, and he's still hunting for that Oscar. Like, he's gonna do whatever it takes to win the Oscar. He, and whatever his win is gonna be, I'm telling you right now, I'm getting this on the record, it's gonna be just as bad as when Al Pacino won for Send a Woman, Kate Winslet for The Reader, or Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez, Nico's favorite film of all time. It's going to be just as awful.
I can't believe she could fit in those conversations now. That's insane.
Yeah, where it's a career.
We could put her in. Yeah,
it's a career win. Everyone in the Academy at the time fell head over heels for it. Even if we wish these actors had won for other roles. It just happened to work in the right time, and it just worked in the moment. And much like that one, it's like unstoppable. There's nothing we could do about it except just sit down, you shut up, and you watch the fucker give the speech. That's all we could do. We can't throw any fake allegations against him or anything. Not that I encourage that to begin with. I don't.
Yeah, no, don't.
But there's nothing we could do about it, and it's always been a disgusting win, in my opinion. Like, oh, God, I just fuck that win. Like, top to bottom, just awful, terrible. So.
My answer on why it won.
You should clip this out.
My answer on why it won editing and actor is just because it made so much money.
Yeah,
and they wanted to, and like, he was playing Freddie Mercury, and I think like that was the one, right? If we really look back and go, all right, Austin Butler, we do Bob Dylan, we do
Leonard Bernstein,
Freddie Mercury, Leonard Bernstein. Yep. I think most people will tell you, let's vote for the guy who played Freddie because of just the way Freddie Mercury was, and the movie made so much money.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, it also didn't have, like, I don't want to compare it to Barbie, but like, it also didn't have a movie like Oppenheimer that could justify, right? Like, taking it out in every category.
Yeah.
If they're like, all right, the two sound categories because it's a live performance, quote unquote live performance, right? And let's give it editing because that's another win we could give that movie that people watching will be happy about. And and we have to give it to Freddie Mercury because also I think his win is why we don't see the other biopics win as much anymore. I think there is buyer's remorse in the Academy. Bad. I do agree with you there.
I'll let Zeddy speak on this because it feels like Nico and I are just talking at length mostly about the awards thing. Because I want him on this discussion. But I honestly do think, and I won't name any names on this, but I've actually talked with a few people who've talked with people about the last couple of like Oscar winning performances, and like, people were probably wondering, like, why the hell didn't Chalamet win for Bob Dylan? Why didn't Cooper win for Bernstein? Or why didn't Butler win for Elvis? It's the fact that this and the Renee Zellweger win back to back is what. Yeah, you forgot about that, didn't you?
No, I never forget. I just didn't think that would come up today.
Yeah, but it's because of those two back to back. It probably allowed more. Like, we're getting more international voters coming in.
Yeah,
and because of that, it's like, just because you make a bunch of money at the box office and you're this like juggernaut hit doesn't always guarantee you the win. Obviously, you have to be the strongest film of the lineup. And on top of that, your ideas and themes of the movie have to resonate with the voters emotionally. But on top of that, I also think that the international voters are coming in and saying, no, stop. We're not giving this musician biopic another Oscar. We're done with that. We're moving on to someone else. Like, who is like a film that really resonate with us emotionally. And that's why this past year, I always stuck with Brody for The Brutalist. I didn't care how much money A Complete Unknown was making. I don't care what the audience scores were. Like, that is the kind of performance that they were going to go for. And, like, I hope that's a lesson that we all learned going forward, that's what the Academy is going to do with
I
lead
wonder
actor.
who he's talking to.
Yeah,
when he
geez.
says that, I wonder who he's talking
Yeah.
to. Because I didn't
wink,
predict a
wink.
musical biopic win in the last couple of years, did I? Did I?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Anyways.
And you guys almost came along with me. Let me remind you,
Yeah.
who I actually think is. Oh no, I won't. Say that.
That's a whole other debate we could have. But Zeddy,
Yeah.
so going to anything else we didn't bring up about this Oscars in terms of like what happened with First Reformed? Do you want to bring up or any additional thoughts?
No, I mean, like, again, the person you want to win rarely wins for the movie that you think they should ultimately win for. I've said that for the longest time. It doesn't always come when you think that it should, and sometimes it's unfortunate. Again, the Rami Malek thing, it is what it is. There's just a lot of people that just thought that was cool. Regardless of how we may feel about it, they thought it was cool. It was a cool thing to do at the time, regardless of how it's aged, right? But now, it was a learning lesson, because now you take things into account, like, their age. Have they won before? How many times have they been nominated? Is their film well-liked? There's all these different variables that now go into this, right? It's why I think something like the Michael Jackson movie is ultimately, I think, going to be a very eye-opening movie, because I kind of do see a similar path to a Bohemian Rhapsody. I think the Michael movie is going to be a little bit more well-liked, Bohemian Rhapsody, because I think a lot more people happen to like Michael Jackson a little bit more than Freddie Mercury. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
But it is going to be something I think to really keep your eye on, because I do see a lot of parallels in which that can go. But this isn't a 2026 Oscars suspension.
Yeah.
That'll be later down the line.
I should also point out that Ethan Hawke had led the majority of the critics groups.
I just don't know who he really gets in for, though. Like, when I really think about it.
No, like when you really look at it, it's like
it's like he would have to have bumped out Rami
Like-
Malek. That's the only one that makes sense.
Well, no, because he was gonna win. That's the thing. It's like you weren't gonna take out Vigo because clearly they love Green Book. You weren't gonna take out Cooper, who should have won. I know that you know that, Matt.
Christian Bale, they love him. So.
And then like Bale, they love, and he's playing Dick Cheney. It's like, of course. And then I'm drawing a blank. Who's
Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe. Yeah.
Oh, I like
guess Willem
I like
Dafoe,
that
yes.
nom too.
Yeah.
No, but I like that win. But
I'm saying, like,
never
you
mind.
have to,
Yes,
like,
yes.
if you're
No.
going to play the game.
Exactly. He would have been the one who would have missed for Ethan Hawke.
And Dafoe was going to get in looking back because he's playing Vincent Van Gogh. They had nominated before with Mr. Douglas, Kirk Douglas, years ago for Lust for Life, I think it was.
And then the year before, he got nominated for Florida Project.
Yep.
Florida Project.
Right.
Was he 3 years in a row that he got in?
So
Or was that Adam Driver I'm thinking of?
Adam Driver only got the 2 nominations, but Willem Dafoe got 4 nominations
Oh,
altogether.
God.
He got Platoon, Shadow the Vampire, or whatever that vampire movie was in 2000. Then he got back with Florida Project, and then At Eternity's Gate.
I thought he got I thought he got nominated
he
3 years in a row.
He was on a run at the time.
I thought he
so,
got.
yeah.
Maybe they were. They were hoping he would get in the following year for The Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's
And
what
the
it was.
narrative was, is he really going to go 3 years in a row getting nominated?
That
And then
was
he
the
didn't.
one.
He should have got in, though, by the way. But that's neither
that's
here nor
another
there.
Again,
and Pattinson should have got in, too. But
like
that's
one of many
No, that's a
conversations we
Patreon.
could have
Yeah.
outside of the podcast.
That's a Patreon. Yeah.
But yeah. Final thoughts on the awards race for First Reformed. Would you have nominated for anything? I mean, I think we all collectively agree Ethan Hawke.
Oh,
should
I would have
gotten in.
nominated it. I would have done cinematography, actor, picture. I would have added a lot more. I would have added a lot more personally, but
Yeah.
it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Sadly,
Yeah.
crime.
Yeah, it's a murder that the Oscar police doesn't want to solve because they're ignorant, they're stupid, they're
lazy.
Lazy. Thank you. Yeah. Fuck Green Book and fuck Bohemian Rhapsody. So
Hell yeah.
yeah, and fuck Brian
I think that's
Singer.
where we end. And fuck Brian Singer. I think that's where we.
Yeah, so that's where we're
It's
gonna
a
end.
perfect place to
Yeah,
wrap.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't have anything else to add other
Watch
than
The
that.
Usual Suspects. Nothing else. Continue.
Yeah. Anyways,
And X-Men 2.
yeah.
Carry on.
So,
There you
yeah, that's pretty much all the conversations that we have. I don't really think we have anything more to add because otherwise we'd just be repeating ourselves at this point, whether it's on or off air of stuff we've already said. But anywho, so yeah, this was fun.
So much fun.
I hope,
So much
like I said,
fun.
I hope to God this isn't the only time you guys are on the show. I hope you guys are back on again. Zeddy's been
Hell
on
of a
here 3 times
compliment.
now.
I
We
know.
will be back.
So now I need to bump up those numbers
You need to-
without
you need to
him,
bump up those
respectfully.
games, bro.
But hell of a trio. I mean, we also just
Yeah.
got. I would be remiss if I didn't say this. I know that we've all posted about it, but Matt, we also just met you in person like less than a
Yeah.
month ago, which was amazing to get to watch the Oscars with you.
He's got legs, everyone. He's got legs.
You two left that night much more happy than me, but we left happy with friendship.
Yes, and there were even times where no bullshit, guys. Where there were times where I had to look at Nico and Zeddy and be like, yeah. What do you have to say about it now?
Be like that a lot more than anything. But
I
that's
still
fine.
have nothing to say about it. Joke's on you.
So yeah, no, I know.
All I'm gonna say is that these two are so blessed to have me in their lives around.
Oh,
Oscar season.
absolutely.
That's all I'm gonna
Absolutely.
say.
Well, that goes without saying.
Matt especially, his gold derby score. Let me tell you, it's really bumped up since he's met me. Let me tell you.
But yeah, and it also doesn't help
No.
that you kept stealing answers off of me, like the cinematography one. I'm like, damn it, that's one category
I
that
don't
Zeddy
know
knows.
what you're talking about.
He knows that category now. Oh well. At least I have the adapted screenplay category locked up to be like, I know how this race is gonna go. Essentially, by the end of by the time we get to Oscar night, I'm like, yeah, I know what's winning adapted. Anyways, moving on. So. Yeah, like I said, thank you guys very much. I will have you both on the show again down the road, especially Nico. We got to bump those numbers up. I might even have some kind of exclusive episodes coming up down the road. I'm not going to say much. It's still a rough draft in progress. I won't say what it is we're going to be doing with the channel, but hopefully around like July, August, we'll do something with the show to celebrate its
Nobody
2-year
can see
anniversary.
you,
But
Heck yeah.
but I got some ideas going that I'll discuss down the road when I'm ready to reveal publicly. But
He's going to review Aquaman on the show.
yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about. Yeah, let's go through all of James Wan's movies, including Furious 7.
Matt's top 10 comic book movies. Future Patreon episode.
Aquaman's number one.
Yeah. So, anyways, thank you again for dedicating your time to be here on the show, both of you. Would you, before we sign off, is there anything you'd like to plug in on where our listeners can follow you along?
Zeddy, can you do V39 in yours?
Sure. Yeah, no, of course. If you guys want to follow me, I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. I'm at Nick Zednik. Give me a follow on all those. Always reviewing something. You can also follow me and Nico and his wonderful father. We are at The Vigilante 1939. Just search the name of that podcast. It's a DC Marvel box office leaning podcast. You can find us over there, and I do have some other non-comic book movie film reviews that are going on that channel as well. But thank you, Matt, as always, and thank you, Nico. This was a blast.
Dude, it was a blast. Yeah, all Zeddy's reviews are on V39 as well. He's a part of the Chicago Indie Critics with me. You could find all my film reviews on @NicoKnowsFilm on TikTok and YouTube, and just @Nico Caruso on Twitter and Letterboxd. That's the best place to reach me and see everything else I do is Twitter or X or whatever we call it now. But fuck Bryan Singer.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm keeping that in.
Hell yeah.
You can follow me and the show through Linktree under @Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts, such as Twitter, Letterboxd. On the same site, I've also provided a link where you can listen to more episodes of the show. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat, let me know, and hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. I should also let everyone know that I'm going to be booked up for the next couple months. I have a couple of guests coming in, not just for Lone Screenplay nominees, but even the Lone Screenplay winners. We will be discussing Conclave down the road in a couple weeks, or as I like to call it, Midclave. It will be, yeah, Lewis has already agreed, and we will be covering it. It's just, I had to rearrange some of the scheduling going on, so that's why we've been holding off on it for as long as possible. And also, I figured with, we just finished the Academy Awards, and we're finally done with this past season, so I'm like, all right, let's take a breather and we'll get to Conclave when we're up for it. So we'll cover it down the road soon when we get around to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.